Alrighty, so I am going to I'm waiting to see if this is working. All right, here we go. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to present my screen, and I'm going to give you guys a brief go through of what we did today in class if you were not here. All right, so I think this is good. I think this is working. We'll give it a shot. All right, so we're talking about the brain, which is part of your central nervous system. Your brain, your spinal cord, or your central nervous system. So go through our Hawk Challenge. Think about what your self-control you're going to do is going to be for today or for this next week. Mine's going to be no sugar, so do your best to try to keep up with that. All right, so some of this stuff I would like you to do for review. So go and on a piece of paper, draw 2 neurons communicating and try to label all of these parts. And then again, try to go through each of these. So what we're going to do is talk about the mnemonic devices. So neuron dance, remember wave your dendrite, nod your soma, shake your axon, terminal branch, wrap the myelin sheath around it to make it go faster, speed up that communication. Remember, an agonist is when you mimic. So when I say agonist me, that means mimic me. Think of me dabbing. Think of yourself dabbing. Agonist is mimic. Antagonist, think about your hand being a neurotransmitter, running into the other hand and stopping. It is blocking it, like a villain blocks the hero from going into the receptor. Too much dope in the halls, dopamine, hallucinations, is schizophrenia. Not enough dope in the park, Parkinson's disease. You say Sarah's not happy or sad. Serotonin is your mood. It balances out your mood. And then Nora, for norepinephrine, likes to fight and take flights. So we just talked about some neurotransmitters. Now we're talking about the brainstem. The brainstem is the oldest part of your brain. It was the first thing that was developed in any humans, and it is developed in any, essentially, babies as they're being created. So this is called the reptilian brain, because if you ask like a reptile and you have a name and you tell it to like come towards you or try to get its attention, it can't do that. It can't even really think because all it has is a brain stem. It does not have the outer area of the brain that you can see right here, the cerebral cortex. And what that does then is it helps us to think and communicate and do all things that humans can do. Reptiles really only have this brain stem. And so that means they only have the things that are needed to survive. So we have the pons and the medulla. And so the medulla controls our heartbeat and breathing. So think about your chest, your heartbeat and your breathing. So how we're going to remember this, and I want you to add this to your notes, is medulla equals Medusa. And so Medusa, when you look at Medusa in the eyes from like the Hercules stories, what happens is you turn to stone. When you turn to stone, your heartbeat and your breathing stops. So rewind that if you need to, but add that to your notes and thoroughly add that to your notes. Medulla equals Medusa. All right, the next is the pons. This helps us with sleeping and our REM state in order to dream. And so the way you're going to remember the pons and sleeping is you put your pons on your pillow. And again, your brainstem is like straight through the back of your head. And so your pons is the back right here. And so when you put your pons on the pillow, you're going to lay just on your back and your pons on your pillow for sleeping. Add that mnemonic device, pons on your pillow. And then what that means, your pons helps you to sleep and dream. All right, so how do we remember the medulla? Medusa. Have that written explicit in your notes. All right, the next one is your reticular formation. So this keeps your brain awake and alert and you focusing. So when you wake up in the morning, your reticular formation is kicking in and alerting your body and waking you up. If you have someone wake you up in the middle of the night, like a siren outside, that is your reticular formation kicking on to help you to survive. So remember, the parts of your brainstem are helping you to survive. Your medulla, your heartbeat and your breathing, and then your pons to kind of like help you to sleep. And then your reticular formation is not really part of your brainstem, but it's kind of connected to it. And so this is developed as well. And this gets you awake and alert. So the way to remember this is the reticular formation, like tick-tock, like an alarm clock. So the reticular formation wakes you up, it gets you alert, it kicks in essentially to help you to survive. So back when, like, if we talk about evolution, essentially a human would need this alertness to wake up in the middle of the night so a tiger or a woolly mammoth would not kill them. So again, going back to survival. All right, the next is the cerebellum. The cerebellum is like the base of your brain, and this does balance and movement. So right now you're sitting in your chair, you're not falling out of it because your cerebellum is helping you to balance. It also helps you to move. Examples of this also are your procedural memories. So we call it balance, movement, and procedural memories. Procedural memories are how to do procedures or how to do things. When you write your name, you don't have to think to do it. When you play an instrument, you play it without thinking. You know how to move your fingers. When you type on a phone or type on a keyboard, you do not have to think to do it once you learn where the buttons are. These are procedures. If I ask you to walk down the hall, you don't have to look at your legs to do it. You can naturally just do that procedure. So you're going to remember this is cerebellum is bell, the bell. So this bell works. This bell doesn't work. It's upside down. It's going to tip over. There's no balance. This bell, the base is on the bottom. It's going to balance. If I want to play the bell, think of like a handheld one, I need to move to make it ring. And if I play the actual instrument, I don't need to think about how to do it. It's an implicit or procedural memory, which means when I just do it, that procedure, I know how to make the bell ring. I don't need to think about how to do it. It just happens naturally. So again, the cerebellum is not facts, it's procedures. Writing your name, walking, eating a banana, whatever. All those things you do without thinking. All right, so try to connect these. Draw it on your screen. Make sure you're adding the mnemonic devices. I can't stress that enough. Now we're going to talk about the limbic system. So next to the limbic system, add emotions and memories. And again, pause the video whenever you need to. The hypothalamus, pituitary gland, amygdala, and hippocampus is our focus. So the hippocampus, this is where new memories are processed. Not necessarily permanently stored, but essentially this is long-term memories. So if I asked you who your third grade teacher was and you remember, that is part of your hippocampus recalling those memories. If I asked you what you ate for lunch on Monday, that would be an event, something that occurred, a fact. So it's actually recalling things. If I asked you what the Pythagorean theorem is and you can tell me what it is, that means it's part of your hippocampus is stored this long-term memory. All right. So it's not a procedure, it's an actual fact or event that occurred. So how you're going to remember this is you're going to remember having a hippo on campus. And the hippos are going to be all around campus, on a car, in the water, running up the grass. And so the hippos on campus are essentially going to be something you can never forget that event. You never forget the event of the hippos on campus. Pause and add that to your notes. Next is the amygdala. What this does is it processes all of our emotions, mainly fear and anger. So I'm going to give you a quick story. So when I was in Briscoe Shoemaker, the greatest school in the country, Indiana University, there was this girl on my floor. And at the beginning of the year, she was super mean. She bullied everyone. She actually made me super afraid. So we were in a meeting talking about what we were going to order. We wanted to order pizzas. She didn't want to do it. She's kind of yelling at everyone. We're like, we just met this girl. She's not very nice. And so one day walking out through here, she dumps water out midwinter on me and a friend. And we ended up not being able to go to class because we're soaking wet. We had to go up and shower. And it was midwinter. We would have froze if we walked to class for like 20 minutes. So I want you to pause the video in a second and guess what her name is. Exactly. You got it. Her name was Crazy Amy. This is not actually her. This is one of my friends, but it's an example. Crazy Amy, think of amygdala, fear and anger. She made us feel all the types of emotions. We were afraid of her anger. This is actually her, my friend Katie, and this is us in Austin. One of my good friends, social science teacher, she let me use her as an example. So I want you to look at this when you're taking psychology and ecology. Remember all the parts of the brain because of your super awesome teacher. Which part of the brain will you be using? Pause. All right. Hopefully you said hippocampus because long-term memory. And the next time that you get mad at your parents or siblings, you should consider to have a better control of which part of your brain. Pause. All right. The amygdala. All right. Two left. Hypothalamus. Add to your notes. This controls the pituitary gland. And I want you to write down the pituitary gland is the master gland or the gland that controls the endocrine system. So the hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland, which then controls the endocrine system. When it detects an imbalance in your body, it triggers directions for response. So write each of these down. Body temperature goes up, you start sweating to cool yourself down. When you get hungry or thirsty, it triggers your stomach to contract, hunger pangs, and that tells you I need to eat or stop eating. Also, fight or flight. So it tells you when you need to run. It gets your heartbeat going. It tells you when to go. And then lastly, sexual arousal. Those 4 things. All right. And then you can obviously see the response to that one as well. So how you're going to remember the word hypothalamus. I want you to think of this picture, and I want you to think of hypothermia. Hypothalamus, hypothermia. Write those down next to each other. So what 3 things are you going to give this man if he's stranded here for 2 weeks? Right when you pick him up, hopefully you gave him food, water, and a blanket, so body temperature. So to remember this, picture this guy, hypothalamus, hypothermia, and then food, water, and a blanket, body temperature, those 3 things. And then you can also remember the hypothalamus, and I want you to write this down, the 4 F's, fight, flight, food, and then mating. Those are the 4 F's the hypothalamus helps with. Either way that you want to remember it is good with me, but have both in your notes. So pause and put it in your notes. All right. So what I want you to do is I want you to write down or type in somewhere, actually process this. How do we remember the medulla, the amygdala, and cerebellum? What's our mnemonic? And then what is the function of each? Give at least one example of each one. So pause and go do that. All right. Now what I want you to do is pause this screen, draw with your finger arrows to each one. You should know all 5 at this point. All right. Last one, the thalamus. So this takes any information that you get from your senses, seeing, hearing, tasting, touch, not smell, and it goes to your thalamus and then the right spot in your brain. So when you hear something, it goes through your ears, it goes to the thalamus, and then it goes to your temporal lobes, which we'll learn about next time. When you see something, it goes through your eyes, through a bunch of neurons, to your thalamus. Again, your thalamus then goes, ooh, this is sight. I'm going to send this to your occipital lobe. All right. So you can watch these videos then on your own. We watch them during class. And then what I want you to do is write 2 words that best summarize the function of the limbic system. Write this down somewhere. All right. This is how we're going to remember the thalamus. The telemus, like telephone. So put telephone, telemus. And so back in the day, the operator would take one person's call, and then in order to call someone else, you would call the operator, and they would unplug one of these things, and they would then plug it into the other person. So if Johnny wanted to call Lucy, Johnny would call the operator and say, can you connect me to Lucy's house? They would know, and they would connect that. So this is essentially what happens. This line is you seeing something. The operator then takes it. The thalamus is one of these ladies, and then it connects it then to the occipital lobe, the thing that helps you to see. So it sends the sensory signals to the correct places: seeing, hearing, touch, and taste. All right. I want you to watch this video then on your own in the slides and tell me which part of the brain is functioning properly and then which part is not. And so you have to kind of reflect back on some of the things that we talked about. Send me an email then of this one. This kind of can sum everything up. And then do this quizzes at the end. We haven't learned all of it, but we've learned most of it. It's 12 questions. Do this and send me your score in the email. And we're going to start here next time. I really hope that this recorded. And yeah, so I'm going to stop this now. Email me with questions. You guys are awesome.